The Misdeeds of the Child Jesus in the Infancy Gospel of Thomas, a detailed exploration. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas is an apocryphal, non-canonical Christian text, likely composed in the mid to late 2nd century CE, that seeks to fill in the gaps of Jesus' childhood, a period largely absent from the canonical Gospels, except for a single story in Luke 2:41-52. Covering the ages of 5 to 12, this text presents a series of fantastical and often controversial episodes that portray the young Jesus as a precocious, miraculous, and sometimes volatile figure. While some stories highlight his divine power and wisdom, others depict actions that modern readers might interpret as misdeeds, acts of wrath, cursing, and even violence, prompting debates about the text's purpose in its portrayal of Jesus. This article examines these so-called misdeeds in detail, drawing from the text's narratives, their historical and cultural context, and scholarly interpretations, while avoiding anachronistic moral judgments and focusing on the text's theological and narrative aims. Overview of the Infancy Gospel of Thomas. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas is not a gospel in the traditional sense, but a collection of loosely connected stories, sometimes called the paideia, Greek for childhood deeds, focusing on Jesus' youth in Nazareth. Likely written in Greek, the text is attributed to Thomas the Israelite, though scholars agree this is a pseudepigraphal attribution, possibly to lend authority by associating it with Thomas the Apostle or Judas Thomas, rather than an actual claim of authorship. Its earliest manuscript fragments date to the 4th or 5th century, with the oldest complete manuscript, the Codex Sabaiticus, from the 11th century. The text was deemed heretical by early Christian authorities like Eusebius and Pope Gelasius I, and it was excluded from the canonical Bible due to its late composition, lack of apostolic authorship, and sensational content. The stories depict Jesus as a child imbued with divine power, performing miracles, outwitting adults, and navigating familial and social tensions. However, several episodes portray him using his powers in ways that seem impulsive, vengeful, or destructive, contrasting sharply with the compassionate Jesus of the canonical Gospels. These misdeeds have sparked fascination and unease, leading some to label the young Jesus a super brat, while others argue the text reflects early Christian curiosity about how divine power might manifest in a child. Below, we explore the key episodes of Jesus' alleged misdeeds, their narrative context, and their significance. Key episodes of Jesus' misdeeds. 1. Cursing the son of Annas the scribe, chapter 3. One of the most striking episodes occurs when Jesus, at age 5, is playing by a stream, creating pools of water and molding 12 clay sparrows. When a Jewish observer reports to Joseph that Jesus is violating the Sabbath by making clay figures, Joseph rebukes him. Jesus responds by clapping his hands, bringing the sparrows to life and commanding them to fly away, an act of playful defiance that showcases his divine power. However, the episode takes a darker turn when the son of Annas the scribe, angered by Jesus' actions, uses a willow branch to destroy the pools Jesus had made. Jesus responds with a curse. Your fruit shall be without root, and your shoot shall be dried up like a branch scorched by a strong wind. Instantly, the boy withers and dies, leaving his parents to mourn and accuse Joseph of raising a dangerous child. This episode highlights Jesus' sensitivity to interference with his creations and his readiness to punish those who oppose him. The death of Annas' son is abrupt and severe, prompting Joseph to lament, "Why do you do such things? They suffer and hate us." The text suggests Jesus' actions provoke fear and social tension, as the boy's parents demand that Jesus either bless rather than curse or leave the village, killing a boy who bumps into him, chapter 4. In another unsettling incident, Jesus is walking through the village when a boy accidentally bumps into his shoulder. Provoked, Jesus declares, "You shall no longer go our way," and the boy immediately falls dead. The villagers, witnessing the event, exclaim, "Where was this boy born that his word becomes a deed?" The boy's parents confront Joseph, blaming him for Jesus' actions and insisting, "Because you have this boy, you cannot live with us in this village. If you wish to be here, teach him to bless and not to curse." In response, Jesus escalates the conflict by striking the accusers blind, further intensifying the community's fear and anger. Joseph, frustrated, grabs Jesus by the ear, prompting Jesus to retort, "It sufficeth thee to seek and not to find, and verily thou hast done unwisely. Knowest thou not that I am thine? Vex me not." This episode portrays Jesus as quick to anger and unyielding, using his divine power to punish a minor offense with death and to silence critics with blindness. His sharp rebuke of Joseph underscores a tension between his divine authority and human expectations of obedience, a recurring theme in the text. 3. Blinding the villagers, chapter 5. Following the death of the boy who bumped him, the villagers' accusations against Jesus lead to another act of retribution. When they criticize him, Jesus curses them, and instantly the ones accusing him were blinded. The text notes that onlookers are sore afraid and perplexed, marveling that every word which he spake, whether it were good or bad, was a deed and became a marvel. This act of blinding reinforces the villagers' perception of Jesus as a dangerous figure whose words have immediate, tangible consequences. Later in the text, Jesus restores the sight of those he cursed, suggesting a pattern of punishment followed by redemption, but the initial act underscores his willingness to use his powers destructively. Humiliating and cursing teachers, chapters 6-8, 13-14. Jesus' interactions with his teachers further illustrate his assertive and sometimes antagonistic behavior. In one episode, a teacher named Zacchaeus overhears Jesus speaking profound words to Joseph and offers to educate him, saying, "Thou hast a wise child, and he hath understanding." Jesus, however, mocks Zacchaeus' ignorance, declaring, "I know where you've come from and how many years you'll live. I swear to you, teacher, I existed when you were born." When Zacchaeus persists, Jesus humiliates him by expounding on the mysteries of the alphabet, leaving the teacher dumbfounded and confessing, "I have brought upon myself a great disgrace, for I am an old man, and a child has corrected me." In a later incident, chapter 14, another teacher attempts to discipline Jesus for his arrogance by striking him. Jesus curses the teacher, who falls dead. The text notes that no one dared to anger him for fear of being cursed and maimed for life, highlighting the fear Jesus' actions inspire. These episodes depict Jesus as intellectually superior but intolerant of authority figures who challenge him, using his divine power to assert dominance in ways that result in harm, contextualizing the misdeeds. The misdeeds of Jesus in the Infancy Gospel of Thomas must be understood within their historical, cultural, and theological context to avoid misinterpretation. Several factors shed light on why the text portrays Jesus in this way. Ancient biographical conventions. In Greco-Roman literature, childhood stories of great figures often depicted them displaying extraordinary qualities early in life, signaling their future greatness. For example, Plutarch and Suetonius recount prodigious acts by Alexander the Great and Augustus as children. The Infancy Gospel follows this pattern, portraying Jesus as a divine child whose miraculous powers are evident from age 5. His curses and destructive acts may reflect an attempt to emphasize his divine authority, even if they appear excessive to modern readers. Theological exploration of divinity and humanity. The text grapples with the question of how a divine being would behave as a human child. Jesus' actions, both benevolent and destructive, illustrate the tension between his divine nature and his human context. His curses may reflect an unrefined use of divine power, as he learns to channel his abilities for good. This is evident in later episodes, where he reverses his curses, such as restoring sight or raising the dead, suggesting a narrative arc of maturation. Cultural expectations of power. In the ancient world, divine or heroic figures were often expected to demonstrate power through acts of judgment or punishment. Jesus' curses align with Old Testament depictions of God's wrath or the actions of prophets like Elisha, who cursed mocking youths, 2 Kings 2:23-24. The Infancy Gospel may draw on such traditions to underscore Jesus' divine identity, even if the results seem harsh. Community tensions and social dynamics. The text reflects the challenges of a divine child living in a human community. Jesus' actions provoke fear and hostility from villagers who struggle to reconcile his powers with their expectations of a normal child. Joseph and Mary are depicted as perplexed and overwhelmed, highlighting the familial strain caused by Jesus' behavior. These dynamics may mirror early Christian reflections on the challenges of integrating Jesus' divinity into human society. Narrative purpose and audience. Scholars like Reidar Asgard argue that the infancy gospel may have served as a form of early Christian storytelling, possibly for children or catechumens, blending entertainment with theological reflection. The exaggerated and sensational nature of Jesus' actions, cursing, killing, and then redeeming, may have been intended to captivate audiences while exploring themes of power, justice, and mercy. The text's playful tone, especially in episodes like the clay sparrows, suggests it was not meant to be taken as historical fact, but as imaginative speculation, scholarly interpretations. Scholars have offered varied interpretations of Jesus' misdeeds in the Infancy Gospel of Thomas. Historical inaccuracy. Most scholars agree the text has little historical credibility, written over a century after Jesus' life by an unknown author with no apostolic connection. Its stories contradict the canonical Gospels, particularly John 2:11, which presents the turning of water into wine as Jesus' first miracle. The misdeeds are seen as fictional embellishments rather than factual accounts. Gnostic or Docetic influences. Some have speculated that the text reflects Gnostic or Docetic tendencies, emphasizing Jesus' divine nature over his humanity. However, Harold Attridge argues that while Gnostics could interpret the stories to support their views, the text was not originally composed to propagate such theologies. The misdeeds may instead reflect a broader Hellenistic fascination with divine power, moral and theological reflection. Recent scholarship, including works by Tony Burke and Reidar Asgard, views the text as a serious exploration of early Christian questions about Jesus' childhood. The misdeeds are not meant to portray Jesus as malicious, but to show a divine child learning to wield his power responsibly. The pattern of cursing followed by blessing suggests a narrative of growth, aligning with Luke 2:52's description of Jesus growing in wisdom and stature. Cultural artifact. The text's enduring popularity, evidenced by its influence on medieval art, e.g., the clay sparrows depicted in a 12th century Swiss church ceiling, and parallels in the Quran 5:110 and Jewish Toledat Yeshu, underscores its role as a cultural artifact. The misdeeds reflect early Christian curiosity about the missing years of Jesus' life, filling a narrative void with imaginative stories, theological and ethical implications. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas challenges modern readers with its portrayal of a Jesus who seems at odds with the compassionate figure of the canonical Gospels. However, the text does not present Jesus as inherently malicious. His misdeeds are often provoked by perceived slights or disrespect, and many are followed by acts of restoration, such as raising the dead or healing the blind. This suggests the text aims to depict Jesus' divine power as both awe-inspiring and potentially dangerous, requiring discipline and maturity to align with God's will. Theologically, the misdeeds raise questions about the nature of divine power in a human context. How does a child with the power of God navigate human relationships? The text's portrayal of Jesus as both blessing and cursing reflects a dual nature, capable of mercy and judgment, consistent with early Christian views of Christ as both Savior and Judge. Ethically, the stories challenge readers to consider the consequences of unchecked power and the importance of guiding divine gifts toward good, a theme that resonates with the canonical Jesus' teachings on humility and love. Conclusion. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas offers a provocative glimpse into early Christian imagination, portraying a young Jesus whose divine power manifests in both wondrous and troubling ways. His misdeeds, cursing the son of Annas to death, killing a boy for a minor collision, blinding villagers and humiliating teachers, shock modern sensibilities but serve a narrative purpose within the text's cultural and theological framework. These episodes highlight Jesus' divine authority, explore the tensions of his dual nature, and reflect ancient conventions of portraying heroic figures. Rather than historical accounts, they are imaginative stories meant to entertain, instruct, and provoke reflection on the mystery of a divine child in a human world. Scholars continue to debate the text's significance, with recent studies emphasizing its value as a window into early Christian thought rather than a source of historical fact. Its influence on art, literature, and other traditions underscores its enduring appeal, even as its exclusion from the canon reflects its divergence from the Gospel's portrayal of Jesus. Ultimately, the Infancy Gospel of Thomas invites readers to wrestle with the complexities of divinity, humanity, and power, offering a unique, if controversial, perspective on the childhood of Jesus. By Scott Young, aka Sinfamous Gamer,